So thanks everybody for the three presenters for that part of the session. The next piece we have is a demonstration. So Janine Madison and David Morgan from the FSC are here to show us some of the work that they've been doing for Fieldwork Live. So Janine or David, can I just check with you? Can you manage the slides there? Were you able to take control?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. I'll let you get on with it then, Janine. Thanks. Over to you.
Thanks. So my name's Janine, and I'm going to be kind of presenting, I guess, what we've done and the way that we had done it. And then I'll hand over to Dave, who will be able to share a chance for you to have a look at some of the things we've done, and then also our next steps with what FSC are developing with our kind of digital and virtual resources. So I guess one of the first things is that when we started doing this, there was initially a little bit of a conflict, I think, when we thought about what our vision was as the Field Studies Council and potentially what we were trying to achieve with our virtual and digital resources. It didn't necessarily go hand in hand with what we were expecting, that first-hand experiences in the outdoors. But actually, if we drill down a little bit, Fieldwork Live, which is ultimately what we did at the beginning of lockdown, actually helped us address some of our other elements. So it really helped us to broaden our reach. So we were reaching young people, schools, teachers that we weren't able to connect with during our more traditional methods of face-to-face day courses or residential fieldwork. It also was low cost. Actually, Fieldwork Live was free, which again increased that accessibility. It was low carbon. People didn't have to travel to kind of connect with it. And it did provide us with that solution to cope with the challenging circumstances of still delivering fieldwork. But we were really key that we wanted it to still feel personal, still feel interactive, and still promote those FSC kind of values. So we had some key principles, and I think this is really nice when reflecting on an earlier presentation about that virtual Fieldwork manifesto. Fieldwork Live was developed around some kind of key principles. We wanted the remote fieldwork or remote delivery to be purposeful. We wanted there to be interactivity, so students had things to do and that they were meaningful, they contributed to something. We still wanted to promote the high quality teaching that we would do in the field through this digital format. We wanted to place students at the centre of what we were doing and still promote that value. So one of the things that came out of this is that, and lots of people have commented on this so far, is that these were new skills that our team and Dave and I were having to develop, and knowing that we weren't necessarily going to get it right the first time. So that need for agility in what we were developing and to be able to go through kind of multiple iterative cycles of things. So we were able to receive initial feedback about some of our resources and then go, okay, then let's make them as editable PDFs, for example, making sure that they were able to work on mobile devices, not just on laptops, those type of things. So it was quite an important quick fire development process. We were working alongside Encounter Edu, and so we kind of partnered up on this work. And although we had never worked together before, there was lots of crossover in what our goals and our mission of the organisations were. And it actually worked incredibly well to bring those two kind of skill sets ultimately together. So one of the first things that I just want to touch upon is our kind of sandwich approach to Fieldwork Live. So each of the individual Fieldwork Lives had 3 segments. There was some pre-lesson or pre-live lesson resources. There was then a live lesson, which was delivered through YouTube Live. And then there was a subsequent live webinar. And we'll just touch upon each of these in a little bit more detail. Just remind you again, you'll get a chance to have a look at these in a moment. So the resource pack was the big kind of core part of our pre-live lesson work. So within the resource pack, there was teacher guidance so that our schools and our colleges were able to access the resources and guide their students through it. We also used ArcGIS story maps to present lots of information to students with those guiding questions in there. So there was things like this, where we had maps, questions, we were setting tasks that a student would engage with beforehand. And this was to make sure that they felt prepared to attend that live lesson. We also included other secondary sources. So we had newspaper articles, we had questions related to that. We also used data as well. So we had secondary data that students were engaging with, again, all prior to that live lesson. We also had the option for students and schools to submit questions that would then be answered during the live lesson. And so we were able to draw on Encounter Edu's experience with helping students to develop those higher order questions, which meant that they were able to submit those in advance and really kind of ask those really deep, meaningful questions that they'd want to about our kind of subjects. And then we had the live lessons. So these were never meant to be like Spring Watch or a David Attenborough. They were, filmed in people's back gardens on mobile phones, often by partners or dads holding cameras. And they felt quite authentic. They were meant to feel like you were out in the field or that back garden, and there was an element of participation. So, for example, here students have completed a bipolar evaluation of seed offences, and they're actually completing that themselves based on images that they can see, and they're completing that at home. There was other ways of interactivity, so we used photo quadrats. So here is our Rocky Shore example. So we had various different photo quadrats, and students were identifying what was present and then completing that ecological assessment on the shore. We also used kind of live drawings. So we would have our presenter completing a biological drawing alongside the image that students could then complete alongside our live presenter as well. And it wasn't just, although we were across the range, we even with our youngest live lessons, so even some of our Key Stage 2 live lessons, there was still interactivity. So we had the ability for young pupils to create soil profiles by collecting the soil samples and kind of rubbing them on their kind of handouts as they went. So that interactivity was really important to us with what we were developing. And then we had some follow-up teacher webinars. So these teacher webinars were focused on the teachers who had hopefully been utilising the Fieldwork live lesson with their pupils, but we wanted to then extend that further. So we brought together that community of educators to talk about the live lessons, the activities that were presented, and what some of the next steps could be to extend that learning. And so that was our kind of three-step sandwich approach to our pedagogy of Fieldwork Live. The social aspect was important to us, and it was a little bit difficult for us to think about how we were going to do this, because this was an open access across the world, live broadcasts. So we actually used a really simple hashtag, Fieldwork Live, and this was a fantastic way of capturing and gathering that social aspect. So we had teachers who were able to share what they were doing with their pupils during lockdown on their virtual field trips, and it worked really well. And Dave will be able to show you some examples of teachers and students sharing back the work that they did using that hashtag Fieldwork Live as well. We also obviously had the live questions, so that had an element of social aspecting, because we were able to name those people who had submitted questions and answer those, as well as having shout outs to schools and colleges that were taking part as well. So we really tried to have that social aspect in what we were doing, even though there might have been many thousands of people kind of watching the Fieldwork Live. We wanted it to feel quite personal. The managerial aspect and the technical aspect were some things that we kind of worked on and used as we went along, and we used the experience of Encounter Edu as well. So these are a few examples of where individual schools and teachers kind of manage their pupils and students through using the Fieldwork Live resources. So we had teachers who were putting these resources up on their own Blackboard and adding some kind of complementary top and tail resources so that their students were able to access those in the most appropriate way. We also had teachers who were creating their own screencasts of the story maps to guide their pupils through them. So again, they were taking what we were doing and adapting it to suit their individual learners, which again was a really nice way of managing their pupils through it. And we also used Encounter Edu's guidance. So we knew that there was a lot of schools and colleges who had never done anything like this before, remote learning. And so we wanted to provide that support. So there was various different guidance that we were sharing with the people who registered for these events to use the live lessons, the teacher resources during the school closures. So I'm going to hand over to Dave now, who I think is going to let you off and explore these. So I'll come off the mic and I'll hand over to Dave.
Thank you. So hopefully people can hear me. So we, now kind of want to give you an opportunity to go off and explore some of the live lessons that we put together. There's 12 of them, and each of them were 45 minutes long. So you certainly haven't got time to delve into all of them. And I would probably suggest that if you do delve into one of the actual live lesson videos, that you sort of jump in somewhere in the middle. The sort of start, the first kind of 10 minutes of all of the live lessons are kind of welcomes and shout outs and sort of that social aspect of the lesson. So it's probably worth jumping right into the center of one to get an idea of what actually happens and how they go on. So there's a whole kind of choice of topics, there's a choice of age groups. The link down the bottom there should work. So I will go quiet for kind of 5 minutes or so and give people a chance to go and explore both the live lesson videos and also if you go into those live lesson pages, so each of these sort of tiles on the Encounter Edu website sort of links you to the page for that lesson. You can get into the resources as well, so the sort of free resources, the teacher guidance, the this kind of student sheets and all of those kind of bits and pieces for each lesson as well. So I would invite you to follow that link at the bottom of the screen, go and have an explore. We'll go quiet, and then when we start talking, you'll know it's time to return back to here, and we'll kind of close off with what we're doing next. Brilliant. And Trevor's copy and pasted that link into the chat as well. So if you're struggling to find that, then it's there.
That's great. Thanks, David. So yeah, hopefully we'll come back at 12:30 and that'll give people an exploration time. Thanks.
Just while people are exploring, if you, I'm probably talking over a Fieldwork live video for someone here, but while people are exploring, if you do have any questions about kind of anything sort of Fieldwork live related, just drop them in the chat box and Janine and I will answer them as we sort of go. So if you have questions that you come up with while you're watching stuff, just drop those in and we'll sort of tackle them along the way. Brilliant. Sonia, your question, I don't know the answer to because that's all in that kind of our publications team are a separate kind of unit. I wouldn't want to tell you the wrong thing. So probably a question for our publications team, as Janine just said. Andy, we worked with, so because we were partnering with Encounter Edu kind of obviously do this all the time. It's part of what their kind of normal work is, and they stream videos from the Arctic, from coral reefs, really exciting places. So they have someone that they work with who is the kind of live producer of these sorts of live events. So we worked with an amazing live producer called Ellie, who did all of those bits that if you see on the, if you've looked at the Fieldcasts poster from DOU, from Trevor and Julia, basically Ellie did everything that Trevor does in that, and she was incredible. If people kind of want to do this kind of work and they're looking for kind of help because they haven't got that expertise in their institution, get in touch and we can kind of give you her contact details, because she does lots of freelance work and all over the world, because she was brilliant and so reassuring and kind of settling, because obviously these are all of the people who are standing up doing these. Everyone you're seeing isn't a presenter, they're they're a teacher, and their normal day job is standing in front of a group of 30 students teaching them in the field, and all of a sudden they've got a camera. But she was absolutely amazing. Those kind of 5 minutes to goes when Janine and I were absolutely freaking out because our presenters had terrible internet connection. She was the calmest voice you could ever wish to hear. So she was amazing. Fantastic. So I'm going to kind of start talking merely to encourage you back from wherever you are. If you are deep within one of those live lesson videos, I'm going to start talking now so that I don't jump in and try and drag you back in a really clumsy and cluttery way. I think, Des, that OBS is probably what Ellie used for those. I know that Katie and the education team at Esri has used it, so Addy might have a little bit of knowledge about that as well. That's what Trevor uses at the OU. So I'm pretty sure that's probably what Ellie used, but we didn't have to get anywhere near it, which was great. We were learning enough new skills as it was to not have to worry about that. It was amazing. But I think OBS is probably is the kind of thing, at least, that we use that put this together, even though we weren't involved in it. So just to talk a little bit more sort of back on the slides about the impact and the sort of what next of Fieldwork Live. So Fieldwork Live was for us a massive thing. It feels now like it was forever ago. We finished it back in May, I guess, was the last sort of live lessons and teacher webinars, and it feels a lifetime ago. It's ridiculous. But we had 12 lessons, 10 student lessons, 2 sort of trainee teacher ones, as you can see if you kind of headed over to the Encounter Edu site. When teachers joined, teachers kind of signed up and sort of said, well, I've got this many students that I think will be involved. And we were flabbergasted by the numbers we got. Like right at the start, Encounter said to us, well, we kind of, normally we get maybe 1,000 for the Arctic. And we were like, we're never going to get 1,000. What a laugh. The most popular live lesson out of all of them was sort of GCSE kind of T stage 3 level sort of weather and climate, a tour of our Met plot, and it got some 15,000 views on YouTube. We broke Encounter Edu's website. It was bonkers. We were like, this is not what we were expecting at all. So at the minute, to update these numbers, I did some sums the other day, and we are now on almost 100,000 views of kind of those YouTube live videos, which if you convert it, we use a metric of learner hours. If you turn it into learner hours, it's more than some of our smaller centres. So within 10 days, 45 minutes worth of videos, we've contacted the same amount of contact time with students as some of our smallest field centres, all over the world, sharing teaching resources with a global audience of teachers. And if you watch one of the Key Stage 2 ones, you will meet Angus and Rex, 2-star quality tortoises, the real kind of mascots of Fieldwork Live. And the sort of feedback that came back from teachers was really refreshing, really nice to see, and really sort of showed us that what we were doing was adding value to students. Yes, in that kind of crisis time, when teachers didn't know what to do, they couldn't be doing normal field trips that they would be doing otherwise, but actually kind of beyond that as well. And when we spoke to teachers, we did some focus groups after this, we sort of saw that teachers were saying what everybody in here has said, that they want to do real field work, and this is helpful and this can enhance, but it's not a replacement, as I think everyone said today. But watching Twitter was amazing on those days of those live broadcasts. The girl in the bottom left was amazing. I think she came with a caption, something like, I sent my daughter out to get a little bit of soil, and she came back with this. Like, absolutely love her. We had teachers who were sharing ice creams. At the end of the coastal day, they'd all got an ice cream, all of these students and the teachers. They got their sunglasses on. They were trying to make it that kind of social involvement that they would get from a normal field trip. So what we're sort of doing after that, so Fieldwork Live happened, it was May, it's got on. So beyond there, we're kind of looking at, well, how do we use this same approach? How do we apply what we've learned from Fieldwork Live and embed it into FSE's approach going forward, both kind of during the COVID-19 sort of mess and after it as well. And I think kind of reflecting on this, probably everything that we've done with Fieldwork Live and the stuff that I'll share next, probably FSE would have done in 5 years' time. But COVID-19 has just accelerated some of the stuff that we've kind of wanted to do for a while, that I at FSE kind of been banging on about a little bit for a while, and sort of people kind of get, you're that lone nut in the corner, you kind of get ignored. Those big numbers, like 370,000 people engaging with what we're doing, almost 100,000 people watching those videos after the live event, kind of got people noticing the potential, the possibilities of this. So I think going forward, we're probably going to be doing a sort of a key stage 2 sort of young children kind of age sort of weekly nature club in partnership with Encounter. So I think that's something that's kind of happening going forward. But we've mostly looked at how we sort of deliver this kind of blended and digital offer to schools and universities. So our schools package is launched yesterday, entirely by coincidence. It's not a kind of incredible marketing ploy by FSC, I'm sure. But we kind of tried to build together a sort of range of offers that are at the far sort of left, the digital end, very much like Fieldwork Live. Here are some resources. Here's a video lesson. Here are some follow-up resources that you could do with your teacher. And the sort of middle option is a bit more maybe like we've seen from some of our examples today of, well, here is the introduction lesson in a recorded or sort of digital format. Here is the fieldwork bit, and here is the sort of follow-up bit in a video lesson. So teachers are kind of can be quite hands-off if they wanted to. It can all be taught by your sort of virtual FSC tutor on a video. And then the blended option, which is kind of the option that I think we're most excited about and see most value in long term, whereby you kind of have that virtual tutor at the start, you get those video introductions, video lessons to begin with, then you do some real field work in a real place. You go outside and you measure rivers, you count pebbles, all the kind of stuff we would do on the field work. And then that's followed up back at school by your virtual tutor again, that kind of digital recorded lesson bit for a real life tutor. And we're kind of building those all into Moodle. So the way we're kind of delivering those to teachers, we assume that students aren't going to be accessing all of this individually. So the package that we're kind of delivering is a package that goes to a teacher who then unpacks it and gives it to their students. So the sort of the digital box that it's in is just a delivery box and a way of getting stuff to a teacher. And that's all happening through Moodle. For universities, we've done a little bit of work with a handful of universities so far at looking at how do we kind of support them. Their real fieldwork to an FSC centre has been cancelled or postponed. How can we help them recreate something in its place? So we've, again, followed very similar lines to Fieldwork Live. We've been out and made videos of kind of people doing methods and techniques, showcasing how to collect data, how that data must be collected, videos kind of introducing sites and sort of creating kind of contextualized information, along with other forms of media for site introductions, past data sets from students, kind of historic data sets, a bit like someone said earlier, they'd used historic field notebooks to get those sort of past data sets. Virtual data collection, so a little bit like the we used in Fieldwork Live in the Rocky Shore one. That kind of same idea of sort of photo quadrats that students are collecting real data on. They're using real Fieldwork skills. They're just doing it to a photo quadrat, not to a quadrat on the ground in real life. And we sort of bundled all of those together into sort of Esri story maps, just as a nice, neat package to deliver to universities and for students to access and use and kind of get their hands on all those bits and pieces of resources. And how those are all bundled will link very well to what Addy is doing this afternoon, I hope. When we did this, we made these, we sent them to some universities, and then we watched Addy's session on creating virtual field trips with story maps, and we're like, oh, this is really pleasing because that's exactly what we've just done. So if you want to kind of know how we put it into this nice wrapper, then what Addy's going to do later on will hopefully tell you exactly that. So that kind of just gives a nice representative across. University work is much more kind of tailored, is tweaked, is a little bit bespoke. Our schools work is very much kind of, here it is, it's a set menu, if you like. But if you are universities looking for, you've cancelled perhaps a residential field trip and you're looking at how maybe FSC can help you, then talk to us, because we are doing bits and pieces and we are kind of happy to talk about what we might be able to do to help. The worm act, Addy, I don't know what a worm up act is, but it sounds odd.
Brilliant, David. Thank you very much, and Janine as well. It was excellent to go through. Now, there has been various activities and things in the chat area, but I wonder if anyone has any specific questions that they want to raise at this point, or any further comments on the work that's been done with the Fieldwork Live. A few comments and queries that are coming in around the digital divide and some aspects of that. Louise, you were mentioning some of the support that the FSC actually, I think, hopefully will have. But yeah, do you want to comment on that? I mean, did you get much comment around, internet access and people accessing and participating in the session? I guess YouTube is reasonably accessible, or?
Yeah, so we're both looking. Yeah, it was something that we were worried about, and it's a barrier, for lots of schools. I think one of the important things that we tried to do was to have resources that could work on paper, so teachers could print them and send them to their pupils, resources that could work as editable PDFs so that students could just type into them, and also YouTube can work on phones. So we tried to do that. Obviously, you're still relying on, a good internet connection. Yes, you're still relying on an access to a device, and that's a definite barrier, but we tried to do as much as we could do within that.